Hey, good morning, Scott.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty great. What about you?
I'm doing well. Who am I speaking with?
My name's Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. I'm good. It's a little early on the West Coast, but you know, ready to talk to some folks.
Yes, I'm on the West Coast too, so I feel your pain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think people will start slowly kind of trickling in here in a bit. And I'll just start talking to you anyway, although I'll probably repeat myself. Then you'll be like, why do I have to listen to this all over again? But but typically I've been starting the sessions by having all the industry guests and panelists kind of talk a bit about yourself, your journey, things you love to work on, anything you're really excited about right now, whether it's a project that you personally are shepherding or working on, or just something you're excited about that's, happening in the entertainment world at the moment. And then I have this like job I'm really bad at, which is trying to keep everybody on time. And that is that be hi guys. Hey David. Hey there, Yalitza. So as the session goes on, I both try to encourage kind of a free-flowing organic discussion because I just find that's where a lot of the really interesting insights come from. But then what was happening a lot yesterday was that some of the attendees were coming into the sessions late, and I kind of budgeted for the time of people who were there. And then I was like, oh my gosh, we don't have enough time. And I'm really bad at cutting people off and like being aggressive. And so I'm going to work a little more today on trying to keep us all kind of short on time. And then if this has never happened, but if we end up with extra time at the end, we'll loop back for second questions or kind of following up things that we really didn't get to expand on. I mean, the sessions yesterday were just so amazing, and I felt like each one could have been 4 hours. And, it was so hard to keep it to an hour because once people really start talking and sharing and engaging and connecting, it's just a really exciting process. So, hey guys, more people are going to slowly start trickling in, and I'm just going to keep repeating what I was saying to Scott. But basically, these are really wonderful sessions. I was moderating them yesterday, and they were just so inspiring, and everyone was just really grounded and connected, and we got a lot of great ideas. It's tricky to keep us all on time, so I started encouraging everybody to talk about either, and people had actually really interesting variants of both of this, either your creative project that you feel like you could really use advice and feedback on, or if it's a general career question, and we got some great ones. Hey, Lisa.
Hey.
Um, just, one of the great questions was, I've won all these awards, I've placed in all these contests. Now I'm trying to get staffed as a writer, a writer's assistant, and it's my first job in a writer's room, and I'm hitting blocks and how do I get around that? And we had great creative questions like that are big career questions. And then a lot of people had like a specific screenplay or film or project they were struggling with and wanted advice and feedback. And so what seemed to work best is if everyone could kind of explain like what you're working on or that place you're stuck in your career, and then kind of ask your question for help. And then because we have multiple panelists, if you could keep it to a minute or two, and then it gives time for the panelists to kind of jump back and forth, and often a really interesting, discussion emerges with a lot of cool advice and solutions and brainstorming. And as I was explaining, a lot of people kind of trickle in late to these sessions. So I'm trying to budget for time as if we'll have a pretty full house. And then if we get really lucky and we have a luxury of more time, then we'll kind of circle back for second and third questions and thoughts as we go on. It was a lot of fun yesterday. It was just really a lot of really inspiring and organic discussions that happened, and it was the worst job ever to stop them and trying to end the session to keep everybody on time. And actually, the two things I've been doing with the festival this year, both screening the films and this, have both been wonderful and very hard jobs because almost every single film I watched this year was incredible, and I was only supposed to recommend a couple, and it was like, what? They're so good. Like this festival just gets the best films, really incredible storytelling, really great characters, documentaries and features and short films. And then, these discussions are hard to keep on time because, we have all these incredible guests and these great questions, and it's exciting. So I've been starting by having the industry guests and panelists talk first and just share a bit about who they are, what they've been working on, kind of their journey in the industry, and anything that they're really excited about right now. And I'll start with you, Scott, since you were here first, sharing the joys of West Coast early time with me.
Okay. Okay, so my name is Scott Shapiro. I have been writing in the industry since 2009. That was when I got my first credit on a show called Miami Medical. My long and winding road, stories told short, to get there was I was in law school, like a lot of people that are end up in the industry, and
Wow.
opt out after 2 years. I was in the middle of making, writing and directing and producing a full-length feature movie, and realized I did not want to be an agent and represented by people, and wanted to be, or not represent people, but wanted to be a writer and be represented by people. So quit law school, freaked my parents out, moved up to LA, and started banging my head against the wall for a very long time. And then finally was playing basketball with my mentor, and it was a bad time in my time here. I was working as an extra on stuff like Carnival, where they would take you out to the desert and put you in muddy overalls and spray your face with like sticky stuff, and then basically hose you down with an industrial dust gun. And mentor at the time was like, "What are you doing these days?" And I was like, "I'm like a rainy day short of suicide over here." And he was like, I'm looking for a writer's assistant. Do you want to be my writer's assistant?" And I was like, "Jeff, how much do I have to pay you to do that?" And so he brought me on, and I started to learn how to write TV. He eventually got Miami Medical, which was on CBS. You get to the end of every TV season, and everyone's hair is on fire. And my boss was like, "Scotty, I need 3 cases for the week." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I called my father and my cousin, who was an ER doctor, and gave him 3 cases and got my first credit. And then he brought me along to Necessary Roughness, where I was staffed for the first time, and then had a great experience on that show for 3 years, and then ended up on NCIS New Orleans, which was my first time like playing like with the real big boys and big budgets and 24 episodes a season, and that was incredible. And after that, I've just been developing my own material for the last 6 years, where I've worked with people like Viola Davis and Doug Lyman, Joby Harold, and recently one of my projects that I sold to Warner Brothers about 5 years ago has been resurrected, so I'm really excited about that. It's a half-hour comedy about a clean urine dealer with an anger problem, and it's called Pissed. Uh, Kind of, in the vein of Barry, but less blood, more pee, the way that we like to tell people. And so I'm really excited about that. And I also recently started teaching and doing like one-on-one consulting for scripts, and I've been really enjoying that also. So that's what's kind of going on in my life right now.
That's awesome. Wow, what a journey. That was a really cool story. I loved that.
Thanks.
And I'm also I love Barry. I love the whole tone of that show. It's so like smart and funny and dark, but also like quietly human. And that's such a great comp to explore.
Yeah.
It just sounds like it's going to be awesome. All right. And um, next, Lisa, would you like to jump in and share a bit about your journey in the industry and what you're working on and anything you're super excited about right now that you can talk about? I know sometimes I ask that and people are like, it's all NDAs, but anything you could share with us.
Yeah, sure. So not dissimilar to Scott, I started my career in the representation side of things.
Ah,
I worked at CAA and worked with a really great agent who represented, people like Stephen King and James Ivory and Robert Towne, kind of these iconic
hmm.
authors and kind of phenomenal writers. So learned a lot there. And, at the time, really felt that I wanted to be on the agent path. So then he ended up going to Paradigm. He took me with him there. and where I got promoted. And I did that job for about a year before realizing kind of a similar thing, where I didn't really want to be the agent negotiating deal points. I wanted to kind of be on the other side of the table, having people kind of work hard and advocate for, my ideas and thoughts and whatnot. And so then I went to work for a client of ours who was a producer. I'd always kind of been interested in producing. It felt like the perfect kind of balance between business and creativity for me, which is kind of where I land. Um, and so I went to work for a producer who was coming off of the Smurfs first movie, which was a big hit. And so I started as his assistant. And then over the course of 8 years, we moved up to a creative executive and really got heavy into development, which I really, really liked. And then we went and did another Smurfs movie. And then eventually I was promoted to become head of development, which was also a really great experience, kind of, running the ship there and finding projects and material, and really kind of focusing more and more on that and more producing. And then so while I was there, we most recently did the Clifford movie, which was the first studio movie I was a producer on, which was a really great experience. And then after about 8 years, 2020, when everybody was kind of reevaluating, I felt that I personally kind of had to hit a ceiling and wanted to expand more of what I was doing beyond just kind of family films. And so I left there and I started my own production company and started doing more independent films, in which the one that kind of got me out the door was a psychological thriller I did in 2021. And so now my slate of what I'm kind of doing is, and I have like a range of about 6-7 different features in various stages of development. They kind of all focus on kind of serving female-driven voices or underrepresented voices, which with some sort of social impact kind of element within the film that's kind of buried beneath it, not something that hits you on the head, but some sort of through line there. So it's been really cool for me to be able to work on projects that I'm really excited about. Not to say I'll never do family films again. Those were also very exciting and very fulfilling in different ways. But that's kind of where my passions has lied, is working with creatives who are kind of coming from that wheelhouse. So that's what I'm up to now. In addition to that, a big reason why I also left was I wanted to write and direct. So I kind of, I know it sounds like I've literally had a lot of lives in Hollywood already, but so I have a script right now that we're packaging that I'll direct, which would be my first feature. Another script, an animated script I wrote, which we're packaging. I try to focus on producing about 80% of the films I work on, and then 20% of the ones that I feel I'm the best person to direct them, and that I'm really passionate about, I'll direct. So the one I'm probably the most excited about is the one I'll direct, just because I have never directed a feature, and so really ready to do that. And then in the meantime, I do a lot of mentoring. I was a mentor for Women in Film and JHRTS, and it's something that I found really fulfilling while working at the production company I was at, was kind of hiring all of our interns, running that program, and then seeing them all kind of spread their wings and go into full-time jobs. And so I've tried to still do that within my own business, is where can I do that, in mentorships or programs or labs and things like that. Mainly because I think, I didn't really have that when I started. And so I was just kind of feeling my way through things and just kept landing. And I would have really liked like a female mentor while I was kind of navigating Hollywood. So that's what I'm up to. And that's kind of what I do. It's a lot of movie making.
That's a little Clifford.
What'd you say?
Oh,
He's a little Clifford in the background there in your.
Oh yeah, you spotted him. Yeah, I keep him there to watch over me, make sure I'm doing my job.
And is the film you're directing also kind of in this wheelhouse of female-driven things with a little bit of a sort of a subtle social impact feeling?
Yeah, it's about kind of a female finding, it's a later coming of age movie, a woman about to turn 30, who kind of is lost in life and finding her own sexuality, but also there's a lot of kind of, the film explores the idea of like white privilege and what that means, and when she meets a certain person of color who kind of awakens her to her own life and the things she has. So it kind of handles race, sexuality, but mainly it's a heartfelt coming of age film that has like humor and a lot of heart. So yeah.
Sounds amazing. So when can we get to see it? Do we have a rough date yet?
Shooting for hopefully 2023 we shoot. So I'm guessing if we do it in 2023, you'll see it in 2024.
That's so exciting.
Thanks.
That's amazing. And last but not least, David, do you want to tell us a bit about your journey in the industry and what you've been working on and anything you're super excited right now you can talk about and share with us?
Yes, no NDAs. I also started on the other side of the business. I started working for a producer and discovered fairly quickly while I was doing that and reading a lot of scripts that I was interested in writing. So I left my job to do that, and 3 years later partnered with my closest friend, David Weissman. And a couple years after that, in 1994, which is a lifetime ago, our career began. We sold a spec to 20th Century Fox. It was a 2-picture deal, and that really launched our career. And that's sort of what we did for the next 25 years, mostly working on the feature side of the business, sometimes developing shows for television, usually for the broadcast networks. And now what I'm excited about, we made a movie. It was our first produced studio credit in 2000 called The Family Man with Nicolas Cage and Téa Leoni. And we're adapting that now as a stage musical. Which is hopefully, we believe, premiering next year, next December in New York.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really cool. And so you've worked with this co-writer. Did I understand this right? Your entire career?
Correct.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, well, we've been friends since we were 15. It's a very long time. It's a long-term commitment.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, just to dig into that a second, because, occasionally these really interesting discussions pop up about collaborations and co-writers. Do you want to share what for you has been like the secret sauce in keeping this really incredibly productive and congenial working relationship for all these years? That's just amazing.
Love and laughter. It was it's like any long-term relationship, partnership, you have to put it first.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't put it before my marriage, but it's a very close second. It's a very, very close second. And I was with David before I was with my wife, and he was with his wife. So yeah, we put the relationship with each other first. And for the aspiring writers out there, that isn't necessarily the way you have to do it. I mean, we were committed to each other because we were friends first, and this is something we wanted to do together. We wanted to have this career together, and we had faith that we could have a career together. Sometimes you write with somebody just because you click with them on an idea and it's project specific, and that's good too. And then you can go your separate ways. But I think for a long-term creative partnership like the one we have, we don't always agree about everything, but yeah, we make each other laugh. We love each other. I love working with him. We bring different skill sets to the table, and it's worked.
That's amazing. And workflow wise, like to get technical, do you break things down in a specific way? Like, is he more the dialogue person? Are you more the plot person? Do you switch off scenes, or how does it work?
So I think here too, writing partnerships are extremely common in our business. They're all different, just like every marriage is different. We have different strengths. The way we work practically is we break things down together. We get through the outline stage together, and then one of us will start writing on a project and actually write the entire way through the script. And we turn pages over to each other periodically along the way, and we get feedback, and sometimes we start over and sometimes we move forward. And so there are lots of conversations along the way, but we have found in our experience together that the product sometimes becomes diluted when we're both doing the writing at the same time. It isn't until the very end of the process that we actually sit side by side at the computer and go through every scene together. And that process usually is pretty quick and relatively smooth. There are always things that we disagree about, and it's just a conversation and kind of a negotiation, and yeah, whoever makes the better case wins. And if it's a tie, I think the tie goes to the person who did most of the writing.
That's really interesting. So in the history of your work together, is there anybody who's done most of the first straight through writing, or do you kind of switch off projects?
We can usually tell from the type of story and the tone of the movie or the show who's going to be the primary driver behind it. We can usually tell. Every once in a while, a project is really right down the middle. And the truth is, on this movie, The Family Man, which is our oldest movie, by the time, when you go through production on something, you've written so many drafts. I mean, really, like absolutely countless, all the ones that you've written to the point where you sold it, and then all the ones after that and all the production drafts. Honestly, by the end, I don't think either of us could tell you who wrote what.
Yeah.
That's how it ended, but it didn't start that way. So we can usually tell just sort of instinctively from the idea who's going to be the right person to spearhead.
That's awesome. This is just so fascinating. I love hearing these happy collaboration stories, because usually what we always hear about is the bitter fallout and the people who are so furious at each other when their company or their writing collaboration or whatever falls apart. And it's beautiful to think of you sustaining really for a whole lifetime this really fertile relationship.
Well, I know there wasn't a question there, but this is a collaborative business.
Yeah.
And it's really important to be able to work together with other people. It really is. So we've worked with our primary creative partnership is with each other, but we view everybody we work with, our managers, our agents, producers, studio executives, directors, they're all part. It's a relationship. You have to make it work. Sometimes it doesn't work, but you really have to try to make it work. And to be a writer people are interested and eager to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. Just before we get back to, am I saying your name right? Yalitza, is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
It's like jelly and pizza together.
I love it. I love it. So before we get to you, and right now you're in this really enviable position because
Yeah, I know. It's so amazing. So
you're
exciting.
only guest. And yesterday we had these insanely packed panels, and it was really hard for even people to get a sentence out about what they were doing. There's so many people. And so I will be mindful that sometimes people do jump in really late. That happened a lot yesterday. But so far, you'll be able to have quite a platform here of these wonderful industry panelists to yourself. So I'd love to loop back later and open up these questions about creative collaboration, which I just think is fascinating. But I want to dive into you just to make sure, in case people jump in like crazy right before we end.
Okay.
If you want to tell us a bit about a project you're working on, you'd love some advice and feedback on, or a place in a career you are that maybe you've hit a roadblock and you feel like we could all be of help. We're so happy to hear from you.
Okay, well, I'm actually at a point where I'm trying to market my screenplays. I got a couple of finished pieces of work that I have placed in important contests. I mean, quarterfinals. Actually, I was a quarterfinalist in Big Apple Festival.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that's how I learned about this networking event. So I'm at a stage where it's the first time I'm talking to people, telling them about my project, presenting the log line, a little bit of the history of how I created this. So it's basically I'm trying to network and looking for representation is the truth, so looking for a manager or an agent or a producer. I'm totally flexible. I'm happy to rewrite, you know, it's like, it's all very exciting. So my area is actually sci-fi, fantasy, live action animation. You know, Clifford the Red Dog. I'm a fan. Actually, I started with picture books like 10, 12 years ago. Yeah, when my daughter was born. But my background is actually statistics and economics. So I came from Venezuela 20 years ago, or over 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And so after working at Dell and going through economics and statistics, I got into picture books. And then from picture books, I realized, wait, my real love, it's movie making, you know, writing movies. So here I am right now with, like I said, I'm trying to put together a portfolio. And my first script that I'm advertising or trying to find a representation is called Glass Rekindlers. So my question is, can I show some slides? I mean, I'm not sure how to, you know, if I should do like a mini presentation or just tell you about it. So basically, I actually created like a storyboard because it helps me move through the story. And Glass Rekindlers is a story about this teenager. She's a reluctant artist, okay? And she makes a deal with glass aliens, or aliens made of glass. And her dad is dying, so they make this deal. Okay, we'll save your dad if you help us save our people and our planet. So she gets in this quest to help them and awakens the interest of this scientist, this fallen scientist who wants to steal the aliens and sell them to a foreign government. So that's kind of like the, you know, the overall story there. And so yeah, so that's kind of like where I am at. And yeah, so if you have any questions, do you want me to keep going, show more art?
Well, tell us like where you are in this process. You've written this, you're
Oh,
ready
yeah.
to market it, and are you kind of looking for advice and feedback on how to market it, how to get producers interested or reps, or what would
Probably. Yeah. I'm at the stage where I'm starting to pitch and looking for somebody that would want to take the project to the next level. You know, like I said, either an agent or a producer or a manager. You know, they can make adjustments if they want to, depending on what their, you know, focus is. But yeah, that's where I'm at. And so my script is finished, but you know, I think it was Steven Spielberg. I mean, a script is really never finished. I mean,
yeah.
like just yesterday, I was working on a synopsis. I'm like, oh, I just thought about a better ending. You know, and it's like I went and wrote it. And I'm, okay, I'm gonna already have to do a revision of this. So yeah, and I guess the comps, I guess comparables for what I'm writing. I mean, I've, you know, I grew up watching all kinds of sci-fi and Steven Spielberg. So it's like E.T. or Cocoon or Sonic the Hedgehog or, you know, Iron Giant, Ghostbusters. So there's a little bit of it. Even Clifford, you know, because he's a big giant red dog. So yeah, it's the live action animation is very exciting to me. So, and the magical realism, because I grew up in Venezuela, influenced by all these stories and things. So yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
that's where I'm at.
All right, well, open it up to our panelists. You know, we're, as I said, we have such a luxury, and maybe, you know, 5 people are going to jump in the last 5 minutes, and it'll become a really interesting dancing game. But for now, we have so much time to spend on this. So, you know, we can have feedback on Yelitsa's pitch, on advice on this stage of the journey where you're just starting to market a screenplay, and it's like how you approach reps or producers, like
Right.
and dive more into the material if someone has questions
Or
about
if you want to see more, yeah, like I have this little drawing here. I did this. Again, I have a background in picture book illustration, so I got into storyboarding, you know, so this is like a little sketch. There is my little hero. Okay, the aliens actually wanted her to power up 1,000 life pods with the love that is in her heart, you know, with all the positive emotions. So there she is powering up all this little, you know, life pods, and there's this giant pelican and this big cat. I mean, those are the glass creatures, so they show up like that. So, I mean, this is just an example of one of my, drawings for my synopsis. I call it an illustrated synopsis. So,
Love it. Love it.
Can I jump in with a question?
Yeah.
I'm wondering, Yulitsa, if you have, I mean, I understand the interest in marketing the screenplay and getting the agent or the manager, producers, all of that ultimately absolutely necessary. Are you, first of all, where are you based
I'm
geographically?
in Indianapolis, Indiana.
And do you have locally a creative community around you of people who can, or a creative community, it's a different world. It doesn't have to be around geographically. Do you have a creative community around you that you can exchange ideas and material with and get feedback with?
Not locally, but I mean, I have a screenwriting certificate from UCLA. So they are kind of like my community. So sometimes I go to the professors there and, they mentor me. They look at my script, write notes. I sent my script to, I don't know if you had heard of slated.com. I like their scoring system because it's kind of correlated with Rotten Tomatoes. So they've done some very good reports like Arrival or Free Guy. I mean, there's a lot of great stuff. So I've gotten very good feedback from them. They write these reports, and I got like a 76 out of 100, and I recommend, they consider. So I'm always getting feedback through readers. Because I mean, yeah, it's the only way to really know, the quality of your work. So that's the kind of, system that I have. And I mean, I previously worked as a reader as well. I was an intern for a couple of years. So I have a first film credit with Angel Has Fallen, Gerald Butler. I was a reader, so I got my little special thanks on the big screen. That was the first time. So yeah. But so that's kind of like the community that I have. Yeah.
I think, I mean, I'll let the others speak to this as well. My sense is, it was many years before any of my scripts got to the point where an agent wanted to sign me and a producer wanted to take on a project and a studio wanted to buy it. And I really found this is before it's before the blacklist. It wasn't before the nickel, but it was before the blacklist. It was before a lot of these other competitions didn't have that stuff, didn't have the scores. But I did have other writers, friends, people, most of whom who were doing better than I was, faster than I was, to get feedback. And it was super helpful. I mean, even your description of the process and never being done writing, you can give a script to a manager. You can't email them a week later and say, don't read that one, read this one, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, you can, but it's not going to reflect well. So I would really encourage you to vet the idea, the screenplay. It may feel like, oh, well, you're anxious to get going, you're excited about what you're doing. It all makes a ton of sense. But I think there's a difference between the personal feedback from people. I love, the idea of the people who are involved in the UCLA program with you. I think those are exactly the right people to approach about this. People who are invested in you personally, in your project and your success, to really be able to develop something, not just as a one-off, like you get a coverage sheet with a summary and a score and a comment section, but really a human being. Because that's what the process is going to be going forward, right? When you're producing something, that's the kind of feedback you're going to be getting. So I would encourage you to take advantage of a community like that if you have it, and if you don't have it, to find it, because I think it's valuable, at this stage of your career.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. And also because my script has already placed in several competitions, I was told that maybe I was, that I was maybe ready to start pitching. So, I got it to be a quarterfinalist in Screencraft feature, quarterfinalist in Screencraft family, quarterfinalist in Screencraft animation. I was also a finalist in Story Pros Animation Family and a finalist in Creative World Awards. So I have all these placings in, I would say big leagues or middle leagues contests. So then, that's what I'm trying to market it because they told me go ahead and start pitching. You're ready for that. So that's another reason why I'm doing this right now.
So I just had a thought also kind of piggybacking on what
Sure.
David said, which was, as far as pitching is concerned, do you have like a little bit of a network that you can do practice pitches with? Because practice pitches really hone your skills, especially doing this via Zoom now. It's much different
Right. I know.
doing in a room.
No, actually, I mean, a couple days ago, I actually had a half an hour pitch with a person from the American film market. So that was like my first time. So I went through a PowerPoint summary, several slides where I have a log line, then I have an extended, actually a short synopsis, and then I went through my illustrated synopsis. So that's what I did. But at the end, they thought I already had a cast in place and I already had the financing. I'm like, no, I'm not there yet. So they told me, okay, you go and find all that and then we can talk. So, but yeah, this is like my second, try to do a small pitch. So
Okay. I think that with your pitches, like it's imperative to really lock down, brevity is the best kind of thing, but like being able to make your impact in short bursts, and just having that thing where it's almost like a script in your head that you know exactly what you're doing and you're engaging the audience and, giving enough information for them, but not everything, so that it begs questions at the very end. The last thing that you want to be told at the end of a pitch is for someone to just say "well told." That usually means you can leave the office now and not get your check validated. But it's important to really practice these things over and over and over and over again, and really get a good sense of where it's like second nature to you. And so, piggybacking on what David said, like trying to build a little bit of a network, and you can do that, I think, within these Zooms that I didn't think, years ago was as possible. I would try to get into as many of these as possible and try to find people with similar interests and reach out to them. And it's just a different world with everything post-pandemic on Zoom and being able to connect with people in a way that you were never able to previously.
okay.
So I think these sessions are really important in finding someone who really springs to that idea, and trying to foster some kind of relationship with them in some way, shape, or form.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. All right.
I'd actually be curious about Lisa's perspective on this as someone who's heard pitches. As someone who's sold several pitches and had movies made from pitches. Family Man was a pitch. Our movie Old Dogs was a pitch. Our movie Men in Rome was a pitch. These were all started from pitches. And one thing that the way that we approach this, and I would encourage you to at least consider this, especially since you have as your models for this, these really wonderful, inspiring movies, is that the goal of the pitch from when we're doing it is to provide for the person who's hearing it an experience like they've seen the movie. Like, you know, if this is a love story, they should be moved to tears at the end. If this is a comedy, they should be laughing the whole way through. You really, the idea for a pitch is to give people the experience of seeing the movie in 12 minutes. That's really the goal. So if you come in with like a PowerPoint, yeah, your PowerPoint may be an accurate reflection of the screenplay you've written, but it's a little cold, it's a little technical. It feels like you're presenting in a boardroom. And so you're not necessarily going to get the emotional response, the gut level response that I think you want to get and really, frankly, need to get in order to sell something. So I would, urge you to consider the feeling that you had when you wrote this screenplay, the feeling that you had when you saw the movies that informed this screenplay, and try to create that in a room or on a Zoom for somebody else. And think also about, again, I would invite Lisa to comment on this. Think about the experience of the person hearing your pitch and what their day is like, and the 20 minutes to 30 minutes to 50 minutes that they're setting aside to with you and hear you, and all the calls they have to return and the emails they have to return. You want to be a breath of fresh air in that day. You want them to walk away from the experience that they have just had with you and go into their boss's office and say, you would not believe what I just heard. Listen to this. And they should be able to recount your pitch in 3 sentences in a way that's going to get their boss to say, well, call the agent, right? So think about it from the perspective of the buyer and what the experience of the buyer is going to be. Then look at what you've had and ask yourself, how can I fashion this into something that is just going to excite them so much they're not going to be able to take their checkbook out fast enough? And then I think, you'll be onto something.
Okay, yeah, so I don't know, maybe I should have started my presentation saying that I was inspired to write glass rekindlers because of my daughter. She got into glass art, and because my father was dying in Venezuela and I could not see him. So
that's already, that makes more of an impact already than everything you said before. And,
all right, good.
And I'll tell you additionally that your background is unusual, that the magical realism that sort of shaped your sensibility perhaps is unusual. And all of these things can be assets, if they're incorporated with authenticity into what you're doing. They should be. You should bring the emotional experience that you had in your family with your daughter into this project. You should bring the creative sensibility that you have as a result of your background and the stories and the literature and the movies that you grew up with. That should all be part of this. There are plenty of people trying to do big Hollywood tentpole movies. Like, what distinguishes it? Well, you have something. You have something. I would exploit it.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, so the driver was, go through this adventure with these little glass creatures and aliens being capable of saving my father, or saving, the teenager's father in the story, right? And go through a whole journey of dealing with the hardship and fighting this bad guy who wants to steal the aliens and destroy her mission. But at the end, she saves her dad. The aliens save her father, and she has also the satisfaction of having saved the families of these aliens. So for me, it was a journey of hope. So my dad died. I did not have aliens to come and save him, right? But the whole story, the whole glass rekindlers experience, writing it and just imagining it, saved me. So it gave me hope. Here I am now writing screenplays. And I don't think I would have had that experience if I had not written Glass Rekindler. So it kind of rekindled my inspiration. And that's what I want it to be. And also is this girl, you know, the love she has for her father, that she goes into an amazing journey to save him, you know, making a deal with mischievous glass aliens. So there's a lot of that emotional meaning for me in that story. At the same time, I want it to be fun, you know, special effects and all this crazy things that you can do with little glass aliens that eat sand and grow and do all kinds of things. So
I just want to echo what David said, which is, you know, when people are buying a project, they're not just buying it. They're not just buying the idea, they're buying you, you know?
Yeah,
so
true.
you are the most important part, really, to draw them in, to get that buy-in right off the bat, is for you to share, you know, that inspiration of where you got this idea. And I think, yeah, just nailing that. At the beginning of almost every pitch that I have, there is the initial hook, which gets them in, and then the why, and then the why me.
The why
Yeah.
me. Okay.
Yeah, the why me, which is, you know, they want to know why you are the only person that can write this project. They want to know what your personal connection is to the project. You know, like I've sold a couple years ago. There was a project where it was about a blogger who goes undercover into the Republican presidential campaign in order to try to bring it down from the inside. And it was a comedy, and I was able to write that script because I had actually done that before. Like in 2012 and 2016, I went to Florida, Tampa, craziest place in the world, and worked for Mitt Romney, which was pretty nuts, and then worked for Donald Trump's campaign, which was even fucking crazier. But like, I'm able to tell that part of the story immediately up top, that I was a liberal spy that went undercover. People want to hear, okay, this guy is obviously crazy. What did he figure out from all of this, and what is the story that he's going to tell? But like, so because those are comedies and because those are political intrigue, I start with that right away, and it gets people in. Whereas you have this really great emotional thing at the beginning of your own story, your own family's personal history, to go along with the figurines, that I think that could be the natural way to be like, you know, and this inspired me to write such and such. And starting there, get people sucked in with the emotion, like David said.
Emotion, yeah.
And you're gonna have them at least until you get to the hook, you know,
Okay.
of what the movie or idea is.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I guess another layer to this is that my dad was a huge fan of aliens, and he made me a fan of the whole concept of aliens. So when I was a little girl, I remember sitting in the backyard while my mom was cooking and my dad was watching TV. I would sit in the backyard waiting, okay, where are they gonna come? You know, I was waiting for the aliens to come in and take me for a ride. You know, it's like, so all these childhood dreams and fantasies are still very much alive, and I just want to put them in, you know, in movies out there for people to enjoy it. So
it sounds like this is very much a love letter to your own family.
Oh yeah, that's true. Because pretty
Right.
much all my other stories are kind of in the same connection with the family, and yeah. So
yeah, and just to kind of jump in here, I think everything the guys are saying is like spot on. Another thing I always think about with pitching is and it's more difficult now, I do think, doing it through Zoom, because personally I always feel that you can feel a vibe of a room, you know when to pivot if you're losing them in a room, you know if they're, you know, if it's going well in a room. Where now we're kind of behind these screens, and it's harder to build rapport, it's harder to get them to like you, so to speak, through a screen. But I do think, like everybody's been saying, like the business is a huge relationship business. So even if you're in a room and doing all the things, you know, the guys have been saying, and it's going well, another thing to think about is like, you know, winning them over to some degree of who you are. People want to work with people who believe in themselves. And I think a big part of selling a script is really, really believing in your own project and being the biggest advocate for it. And I think another thing to think about is if you're writing a comedy, you should be making people laugh in that room. You should, if you're not funny in the room, they're not going to want to read the script that's supposed to be funny. If you send them a thriller and the way you're presenting it is not thrilling, they're not going to want to read the thriller script because you're not thrilling. And so I think, and I know that's like a harder way to view it, but part of your job as a writer is to be good at pitching, but also to understand your story enough to communicate it. And so, a great writing, is a level of communication, right? So if you can't communicate your own story clearly, they're not going to be able to communicate your story clearly to their higher ups that they're trying to campaign to sell it to. So I think that's really important. And like I said, another thing is there's a level of, I think, the marketplace really comes into factor here. I think with kind of younger writers and, people breaking into the industry, the first thing I personally always think to recommend is write what you know. And it sounds like you've done that. You're writing something that you know very well and that's really passionate and you're very connected to. But something else to be thinking about is why now for your story you need to tell. Does it need to be told to the audience, or did you just need to get it out of you? Because at the end of the day, I think show business is a business and you're a product and your script is a product, and where does it fit in the world today? If it could be a brilliant script, and I think this happens a lot with newer writers, it is a brilliant script and there are so many talented, writers, but there's nowhere for it in the marketplace. So that movie doesn't get bought and it never gets seen. So I think it's good. And by the way, the indie space, opens up more latitude for that, where you don't always have to fit into a studio mandate and, how does it work internationally? And you're asking all these big questions. But it sounds like you like to write sci-fi and animation, and those are studio movies for the most part, unless, you can find an animation studio that's very cheap. So I think that's something I would be thinking about. Like, granted, you connect to it, but how is your audience connecting to it on a universal level? What is the thematic that resonates with people? And then the other part of that is, how is that thematic coming through in your pitch? Because what everybody's looking for is something to grab onto. Like, at the end of the day, movies, they're a way for us to connect. So in the room, you should treat it like that. How are you getting these executives in these suits across the table to connect with you in what you're saying in that 20 minutes you have? How are you making them feel something? If it's thrill, if it's feeling scared in a horror movie, if it's feeling, sadness in your story, or feeling joy or comedy or laughing, like, how are you making them feel something and within 20 minutes to then entice them enough to go read your script, feel something enough where they say, we have to make this movie because it made me feel something so strongly. So I think that's something to really think about, and that's really hard to do. It's not easy. And then, of course, I think the other part of it is, there is an art to pitching. And that's something I would say, no matter what side of the business you're on, you should be studying how to pitch appropriately. Whether you're a producer, director, writer, executive, you're always pitching agent to somebody somewhere to campaign for some idea. So, you do have a limited amount of time to hook people in an opening, intrigue people with your 3-act structure, and close on something that makes them want your product. And so that is an art of itself that takes practice, time, and experience to be good at. And so, like the guys are saying, having a community and people to bounce off to and really practice with, for people to give you feedback. And that's a whole other thing too, is being able to take feedback as a writer, and not be precious about it, but really take it and improve your pitch, improve your script. Taking notes is another whole art form, which, some people are great at and others aren't, and it debilitates their career. So I think early on, like, there has to be a level of vulnerability in sharing your pitches, sharing your work, and be able to receive feedback. But I think creating that community that you trust and that you value their opinion, and maybe to some degree there's some professionals in there or mentors that, like, you trust and you believe in, that, you really trust their opinions because they've seen successes. How did they get their successes? Is like a great place to start in terms of kind of crafting what that pitch can look like.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it sounds to me that I'm almost have to be an actress myself, right? And evoke emotions.
Yeah.
So yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah, the way I put together, I mean, I did use PowerPoint, but it's because I was just showing, like the art. So basically the PowerPoint, I would go, okay, so then this happens, and then the next thing happens. So I'm showing just the pictures of the story, and then using my voice to evoke that emotion. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. On the theme, I do want to emphasize that it's about hope, right? And we're in a world today with anything that would bring hope. It's a wonderful thing, especially if it's something through, something that it's fun to watch, and then you walk out of the theater with hope and feeling that, yes, I'm going to be able to do this, whatever problems are going to be able to resolve. So yeah, I appreciate that. So yeah.
All right, a couple final thoughts. I know we're short on time. You can cut me off. Are we done? Are we done, or do I have two more seconds here with you, Lisa?
You can jump in.
So
this is such a gift. This is a gift to have this meeting with all of you. I'm so privileged. Thank you.
just a few additional thoughts. One is, again, just in terms of the technique of pitching, it's a little bit like, imagine it like an opening or closing argument in a court case. Okay, like you just said that this is about hope, and we all need it. That's fantastic. That's true. Okay, your job is to prove that, and to know the difference between plot and story. This happens, that happens, that happens. I don't care. I don't care. What I care is, I care about hope. I believe that hope is important. I believe it's more important now, maybe, than it's been in a long time. Prove that to me through the story you're telling.
Oh, okay.
Leave out all of the plot that does not help you advance the idea.
Exactly. But that's what like books tell you, that you're supposed to present the plot. But you're absolutely right. The story is a different
and I'll tell you
Yeah.
something else, because I know we're short on time. So now I'm just going to be like, turn off Twitter, turn off screenplay Twitter, turn off screenwriting Reddit. Don't listen to those things. It's great that you have had the experience of getting good scores in these contests. It really is. It's validating. It's encouraging.
Yeah.
It's real in a sense. These are people who don't know you, who are reading your stuff and giving you feedback that's affirming. And it's wonderful. And to the extent that you keep going with the help of it and the support of it, it's great. At the same time, no one's going to buy your script because you were a quarterfinalist here, or you got an 8 here, or a 9, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is, I have written this project. It's about hope. It comes from something personal. It's an extraordinary world that I've created, where there are these kinds of people and those kinds of people, and this is what happens, and limit what happens to the stuff that you really need to include to show me that you have created a world, populated a world, and advanced a dramatic argument. Everything else is just noise.
Okay, that's amazing. You're telling me that. So basically, you're telling me that I need to prove a hypothesis. I'm a statistician. So, my hypothesis is hope, right? And then I have this experience. So basically, okay, this is hope. This is my hypothesis. This is how I prove it. And then the conclusion, right? In each of the, and the audience, they should feel, yes, you proved the hypothesis. So, wow, that's really great. Nobody, what you're telling me right now, all of you, I have not read anywhere. Nobody has said that. So it's like, thank you so much.
Well, listen, I wrote a screenwriting book, and here I am telling you, cast aside all the screenwriting books.
I don't have your book.
Don't pay attention. You can buy ours, but really, don't pay attention to the noise. Really focus on what is at the heart of this story.
The heart of the story.
How can you communicate this to another human being who you want to have a feeling from it?
Right, but question, what about like showing illustrations? Is that something, is that like too cheesy or not really
It's
worth it?
weird. It's weird on Zoom. Like I would
It's
say, if
weird.
you were in the room,
No, I mean,
and
but like through a PowerPoint, you know, like if I have a PowerPoint embedded and there's just too weird.
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, you know, because I come from the corporate world in Dell, everything was a PowerPoint presentation. That's how
Right.
you sold ideas.
Oh, you're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, I think it's a little tough on Zoom to
Okay, true. Okay.
Also, you know, if your pitch is good and people are excited, they're going to ask you all sorts of questions. Well, what do these aliens look like? Then you, oh, here's what they look like.
You
And
show. Oh, okay. Okay, that's good. Okay.
yeah.
That's a learning experience. Very good. And you're saying maybe like a 10-minute pitch or maybe shorter. I mean, if I'm just telling the story and you know, and focusing on the emotion of that story, improving that hypothesis, maybe it's just a 5-minute deal, right? I guess.
well, 5 minutes, I don't think is long enough to give people a sense of the whole story.
Okay.
How the story is
Like you
gonna.
said, 12 minutes you said earlier. So about.
I get nervous going over 15 minutes. And for me, I feel like if you can do it in 12 to 15 minutes.
That's ideal, right? Yeah. Okay.
Well,
Well, this is a
everybody-
scenario where you'd leave a script behind, right? Because you already have the script.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think if you're leaving a script, yeah, 10 to 12, but if you're literally just pitching an idea, those I think can
No,
be
no. I have a completely finished script. Yeah.
yeah, because
so.
they're gonna turn around and read your script next. So, you know, it doesn't have to be so in detail.
Okay.
Everyone,
Here
I'm
is enticing.
forced to end this. I was actually supposed to end it a few minutes ago. This was such a lively, just incredible conversation, and what a luxury to focus on one wonderful person, Yalitza, and her project.
Thank you. I feel so gifted. Yeah, here I got my little friends. Hi, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everyone. Scott,
Thank
David.
you from Peter Rabbit. I'm a fan of Peter Rabbit.
I apologize for the salty language.
Bye, everybody.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Good
Bye.
luck.
Good luck,
Bye.
Lisa.
Thank you so much.
Take care.